Now I've got one more, and this is what separates the aimless practice from the serious practice. This one is very important. So in this live session that you're about to watch, I basically went over how to practice your instruments the correct way and why your growth might be stunted and how you can fix it. This was the first live webinar that I hosted, and we mainly focused on practice routines and the biggest mistake musicians can make and how to fix them so you're not staying stuck. If you'd like to join the next webinar or get future updates about the next one, you can email me with this email, or you can DM me on Instagram or Facebook with this name. Anyways, I'll stop talking. Enjoy the video. So, let's talk about why your growth can be stunted, why you might not be progressing as you feel you should. Because before I show you the right way, we need to talk about the things that are holding you back, right? So we're going to go over 4 different points of why your growth is stunted. And if you're taking notes, maybe make some space in between each section. But we're going to go over, the first one is no structure. We're going to go over no goals. We're going to go over no consistency. And then finally, too much at once. And for anyone that might be taking notes, I'll go over it again. We have no structure, no goal, no consistency, and too much at once. All right. So let's start with no structure. So what does that mean? Well, some people, they might pick up their guitar and they just play stuff that they already know. Let's say, let's look at it from a beginner's point of view. What are some beginner riffs? Iron Man, Seven Nation Army, super easy stuff. Let's say they play Iron Man and then they mess around with it a little bit and then they might try something new for a minute and they might mess up, so then they go back to what they already know. And why do you play those riffs that you already know? It's because it sounds good, right? You have that feeling of accomplishment when you play it, and you should feel that. But you're not. It's hard to say that you're really making improvement playing the same things over and over. And what you're doing subconsciously is you're avoiding what's actually hard, and you're jumping between things you're jumping between things without finishing anything. So let's say you start one riff, oh, it's a little hard, so then you start another one, and then you've got all these things going all over the place, and you don't have any structure to your playing. So a good way to think about this for anyone that goes to the gym or work out, it's like imagine you go to the gym and you don't have a plan. So what do? So you warm up on the treadmill, and then you start doing chest. So you go on the bench press, but then you feel like you don't want to, put any effort into doing chest that day, so you just go to you start doing bicep curls, and then you go on Stairmaster to do some cardio. So you might feel like you worked out, but you only did a couple sets of working your chest out, and you only did a little bit of your arms, so you're not making specific progress. So it's not real practice, right? Just like with guitar, it's just repeating what you can already do. So that's our first point. That's the first reason that you might not be progressing as you should, is because you don't have structure to your practice. So our second one is no goal. You don't have any goals. Now, a lot of guitar players, and we've all been here. You sit down and you don't know what you're trying to improve. And if you don't have a goal in mind, then your practice can just turn into guessing. And that is very bad for your progress. So here's an example. Let's say you're coming home from work or from school, and you say, I'm going to practice guitar. That's honestly really vague, right? I mean, the initiative is there, but that could mean a million things. What are you going to practice? A good example would be, I'm gonna go home and I'm gonna work on this chord transition from C to D, right? So even having a simple goal, as little as a transition between 2 chords, that's still a goal. That can make your practice more effective because it's keyed in on a very specific thing. So that's our second reason that your growth can be stunted. It's because you don't have a goal. So our third one is no consistency. So what does this mean? So let's say Saturday you get the day off, right? You wake up at 9:30, 10:30, and then you practice guitar for 2 hours that day. and you're killing it. But then Sunday comes around and you got to get ready for the school week or the work week. So you practice for a little bit, maybe 30, 45 minutes, but then you put the guitar down and the work week comes around and you feel like you don't have enough time, or you don't have enough time to practice during the week. So all of that practice almost went out the door, right? Because your consistency is going to beat the intensity every time. Consistency is what builds your muscle memory. It's how you can remember things that you learn, and your brain and your hands are going to learn a lot better with that repetition over time and not just random bursts of practice. So that's our third reason, is that you don't have consistency. You practice a lot on one day, and then you might not play for another week or a couple more weeks. So no consistency is our third one. So real quick, I'll just review the last three. So we have no structure when you're not necessarily making improvement because you're trying too much. You're trying new things for a little bit, then going back to a little, and you don't know what to practice. Then we have no goals, where you're not specifically trying to work towards something. You're just playing just to play. And then we have no consistency. And no consistency is when you play maybe a bunch one day and then nothing else for the next week, and then everything you practice goes out the window. So our final reason that your growth might be stunted is because you're trying to do too much at once. And I believe that this is very, very overlooked, and this is very common too. So what does that mean, you're doing too much at once? Well, so let's use speed, for example. Let's say you're trying to learn, what's a fast solo? Let's see. You're trying to learn One from Metallica. Super awesome solo, super fast. There's lots of parts to it. And you try to play it at full speed, but that speed doesn't come from trying over and over. That speed comes from control. And you've all heard this, especially beginners have heard this. If you can't play it slow, it's going to be pretty hard to play it fast. So doing too much at once, can overwhelm you. It can stress you out. It can make you feel upset and unaccomplished, and it can demotivate you to keep playing. Another good example of doing too much at once is trying to tackle a whole, 4 or 5 minute song at one time. And I've been there so many times where I just try to breeze through a song, but then you learn you need to sit down and you need to just work on the intro for a little bit, work on the verse for a little bit. So doing too much at once is our final reason that your progress is being stunted and your growth is being stunted. So let's review those 4 real quick again for anyone taking notes. So we have no structure, we have no goals, we have no consistency, and then finally we have too much at once. So those are 4 reasons that your improvement on guitar is being stunted. So let me take a drink real quick. So let's go on to what does good practice actually look like. So we learned that the random playing doesn't work, right? The no structure, not having a goal, trying to do too much, that doesn't work. So what does good practice actually look like? So we're going to go over 4 ways that can make your practice actually improve and actually get better. So just like the first, we learned 4 ways that it's not going to improve, or it's preventing you from improving. We're going to go over 4 ways that if you practice these 4 things, you are guaranteed to improve. So the first one is having focused practice. The second one is having repetitive, and for the people taking notes, repetitive, parentheses, but intentional practice. Then we have slightly challenging practice. And finally, we have measurable practice. So we have focused, repetitive, but intentional practice, slightly challenging practice, and measurable practice. So let's go over focused practice real quick. So, what is focused practice? Well, focused practice is when you are locked in on what you are learning or playing. It means that you're paying attention to what your hands are doing, But unfocused practice, for example, is when you're playing, but you might be thinking about something else, or all the younger guitar players and learners, or when you're scrolling through your phone in between attempts. I'm not even gonna lie. I've been there so many times. I'll play something a couple times, and then I'll start scrolling. Or maybe you're on YouTube learning a song, and you start scrolling through different videos. But the truth is, if your brain isn't involved, then it's hard to say that you are actually learning and improving, because it might just be coming one ear and out the other because you're focused on something else. So here's an example. So let's say you're learning a riff. You could pick any riff, and you're playing it over and over, but you're zoning out. You're not paying attention to what you're playing. So that's an example of unfocused practice. Now a good example is practicing, and you might mess up, but you notice it and you say, the reason I'm messing up is because my pinky keeps missing this note, or I need to work on my stretch. So you fix it. So the point is that every time you play that riff, or every rep, it should have a purpose. Either you're fixing or something, or improving something. And this is going to tie into our next one, which is repetitive but intentional practice. So that was focused. And like I said, I'll go over it real quick. Focus is when you're paying attention to what you're playing and you're taking notes of your mistakes. So repetitive but intentional practice is this one is very, very easy to get wrong. So for example, there's the quote from Albert Einstein: the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results, right? And this is where repetition and mindless repetition are two different things. So we do not want the mindless repetition where we are just going over and over and expecting to get a different outcome. But let's paint a picture, okay? So let's say you're learning a song for your girlfriend. You're learning Wonderwall, and when you play it for her, she's gonna pretend that she is actually interested in what you're playing for. But when you are practicing, you don't want to just repeat it and not change anything about what you're doing if you're messing up, right? You want to improve that each time. So here's an example. Let's say the first time you play it, it's just you notice it sounds messy, and you realize, okay, I'm muting my G string while I'm playing. I need to make sure that string rings out properly. So the next couple times you play it, you practice having all the strings ring out. And then your next set, your next rep of practicing that thing, you realize my chord change from G to D isn't as smooth as the other ones. So you work on your chord transitions. So you're repeating it over and over, but you're repeating it with purpose. And if you play something wrong 20 times in a row, it's really hard to say that you were really practicing it, right? You just trained yourself to play that thing incorrectly. So that was our second one, repetitive but intentional practice. It's very important. So now we have slightly challenging practice. And this one is a little harder to understand, but if you're playing things that are too easy, it's hard to say that you're growing, if you are at all, because it's too easy for you. You can play it. But if it's too hard and you're trying to play it, you could get frustrated and your playing might just come out sloppy. So you need to find the middle zone between those two to have that slight challenge, but forces you to, try new things and improve a little bit. So, an example is, when you are messing up a little, you might have to slow down and, think about what you're playing, and that'll tie into focused practice. So a good example, like I said, is maybe you're learning a super fast riff. Let's see, what's a super fast riff we could think of? Let's do Holy Wars by Megadeth. That's got that super fast intro. It's just too fast for it. You can't play it at full speed. So instead, you turn it down a little bit. You put it to 80% speed, and it's still a little hard, but you're just getting it. You're just getting it. So then you work your way back up to that full speed. So what did you do? You challenged yourself, and now the result is that you did something that you couldn't do before. So you improved. You learned the riff and you played it faster, and you learned something. You improved. So that is the slightly challenging practice. Now I've got one more, and this is what separates the aimless practice from the serious practice. This one is very important. So this one is measurable practice. And like I said, this one I believe is probably the most important part other than focused practice. So if you can't measure what you're learning, it can be very difficult to tell if you're making progress. It can be hard to want to keep practicing. But what you can measure can also get improved. So what does this mean? So let's use a metronome, and you know, guitar players hate hearing practice with a metronome, as most musicians probably do. But it's a great way to practice, or excuse me, it's a great way to measure your playing and your ability. So for example, if you're playing a riff and it's just too fast, so you play it at 60 BPM, but then you get comfortable playing it at 60 BPM. So you turn it up to 65, and then the next day, you know, 65 is easy because you can play it comfortably. So then you put it to 70. So not only are you making progress, but you're also tracking that progress. You can visually see, yesterday I could only play this at 60 beats per minute, but today I can play it at 70. Another good example is taking videos of yourself. I highly encourage this. So you can take, let's say, you know, you're learning a song, and you take a video of yourself. You have the video, and then the next day you realize, okay, I can play that a little better now, right? Or you can clearly see the things that you're not playing right in the video, which can cause you to look at those things that you messed up and fix. So you're keeping track of your progress, and you're noticing how many mistakes you make, and you're able to fix those because you just measured it, right? So you measured, yesterday I could only do this, I just saw it in a video. Now I know I need to work on this. So that is the measurable practice. And like I said, this is really motivating. If you can find a good source of way to measure your progress, this is very motivating because you can see the progress. And like going back to the metronome, you know, today I can play it at 70 BPM. Yesterday I only played it at 60. So you can say to yourself, what's to say I can't do it at 80 or 90 BPM? So measurable practice is very, very important. So let's go over those 4 things one more time. So we have focused practice, and focused practice is when you're paying attention to what you're learning and what your hands are doing. And then we have repetitive practice, and that's when each time you play something, you notice what you need to fix. So you have repetition, but not mindless repetition. Every time you repeat it, it improves. Then we have slightly challenging practice, and that is pushing yourself just a little bit, so you can play it, but not quite perfectly yet. So you still have to think about what you're playing, and you might have to slow down a little bit. And then we have our final one, which we just went over, which is measurable practice, which is you know, like I said, using a metronome, taking videos of yourself so you can track your progress and you can see the progress as well. So those are the 4 things. So what have we learned so far? Well, ultimately, we learned, we learned that good practice, focused practice, isn't always longer. The practice is smarter, right? We're learning that if we can really focus and we can pay attention to what we're playing, then we can efficiently progress on the guitar. So instead of sitting there like for 30 minutes playing a whole song, instead, here's a good example of using all these good practice methods. You can spend, you know, about 10 minutes on just the intro. You know, let's say you've been practicing the whole song for 30 minutes and you realize, oh, my my intro sounds bad, my verse is fine, but then I try to go to the pre-chorus, and my transition from the pre-chorus to the chorus is all messed up, and yada yada. So you have all these problems playing the whole song. So you spend 10 minutes, focus on one part, on one hard section, get it down, repeat it the right way, slow it down, track the progress, just like all the 4 things that we went over, and then you'll improve way faster because you're not trying to do all these different things at once. You're just working on one. So if you use those 4 things, I can't say guaranteed, unfortunately, but if you really apply them, it's going to make your practice a lot more efficient, and you're most likely going to progress at a very good rate. Thank you to everyone that joined the webinar last week. I hope you guys got a lot of valuable information out of it. If you want to, you can follow me on all my socials so you can stay in the loop when we have the next one. Also consider subscribing to this channel. It'd help out a lot. That's all. Keep shredding!